the Secret Story Network is a series of role-player games, live interactive story experiences that are collaborative, that are hosted in a chat environment, mainly on mobile. We started on WhatsApp and then we moved to our own technology. It's run by a story conductor, and those stories come in lots and lots of different flavors, from kind of genre horror pieces to the weirdest, strangest drama you can imagine, to reality shows, to therapeutic experiences, and everything in between, really. And it's been a really interesting project. I mean, I when it started, I saw like massive commercial potential in it, and I don't necessarily think there is that potential in it. I mean, I think for it to have mass commercial appeal with an audience, it would have to have a viral loop in it by which the audience wanted to be conductors. So if the audience want to put on their own stories, it will grow like crazy. But we're not quite there yet, and maybe we never will. Maybe it's just a kind of interesting format that some people like and some people don't. And that's good enough for me. It's been a really excellent experience for me in terms of creating a format and expanding it, building some audience around it, building a team who can kind of understand the type of things that we're making. For my own kind of benefit, making a live story that is done on the fly. It's improvised. We're all improvising all the time under the aegis of a story conductor. It's terrifying. It's a bit like doing a gig. I used to be a musician, and I get the fear when I'm going to go into a story. It makes me nervous. It makes me really nervous. But it gives me that kind of energy, creative energy, that I recognise from being in a band back like a long time ago. And that's quite interesting. And I guess some of my work as a producer, like working with creatives and storytellers, would be like having script meetings, trying to sort of get to the best bit of the story and bring that out. And we'd have meetings, and we'd go away and we'd write, and we'd come back and we'd look at it again and we'd discuss it. But we might take several months to develop a story into a script of something that we might want it to make. In Secret Story Network, you have a premise and you have an hour and a half, and you better make that story good in an hour and a half with the people who are on the chat with you. And that's like a massively accelerated form of story development. So it's really exciting. And I think it kind of joined up some synapses in my brain for making better stories faster. And I think anybody who's kind of playing Secret Story Network stories either has that or develops that as they do more storytelling with it.
The research is related to the use of the Secret Story Network in a kind of community or a mental health scenario. And we decided to do that because we realized that some empathy was created during the playing of the Secret Story games. And I suppose COVID influenced that decision as well. We realized that during COVID, there was quite a lot of people who were isolated, and a lot of arts organisations didn't quite know what to do. They couldn't put on plays and so on. And when they found out about Secret Story Network, they realised it was a good way to keep their audiences in contact with each other. And the more people played it, the more they liked it and thought it was useful in a kind of therapeutic way, I suppose. So we contacted the NHS and formed a partnership with the NHS to see if we could investigate the use and maybe even use it in a therapeutic setting. So Krishna and I wanted to develop the app and have it used by as wide a group of people, but the NHS wanted to understand its therapeutic qualities. So we came together to investigate that, and we got a small grant to explore, and we started off by just working with practitioners within the NHS to see what they thought of it, and to try and involve some of our students as well in understanding what stories would be suitable for helping people explore their internal, I suppose, thoughts. So we came up with a couple of stories and we trialed them, and that's as far as we've got, really. The plan now is to do a bit more of that, and eventually to trial that with a number of people who are in treatment in one form or another, or maybe just to trial it with groups of people. It might be useful in a sort of group building capacity for people who are on the waiting list, or it might be useful for people who don't want to attend a personal session. There have been quite a lot of neurodivergent studies suggesting that work that can be done online in this capacity might be useful. So that's kind of where we're going with the research.
I was invited to have a go and trial it with Krishna and with Anna, and also with my colleague, Stan's drama therapist. And that's an interesting one to think about, because there's no visual and there's not really any sound, so it's more from the text-based. And I was thinking about how you might contract with that in particular, because to me it's quite a powerful use of that type of technology, because there isn't a visual image that you can kind of, so we call that like an externalization of the symbol and putting something at a distance, whereas this particular way of working with story, it's coming from your own imagination, and from the collective you've got others there, but you're generating all the images yourself. So thinking about the containment of that, so we're working on that and seeing whether maybe trying it with some of the staff or whatever. So that would be my one personal experience of thinking about how would you contract. I guess you might have to put something in place, a bit like a psychotherapy contract, and say, well, this we'll be stopping this if ... or you would do a risk assessment about who was taking part, so that they were felt there was some, we call it containment, and some debrief afterwards, perhaps. We did try that as well. So those sorts of contracts, well, it's what we would do anyway. So you would have to, I guess the thing about confidentiality with technology, it's like who else might be in the room, who else might be listening, how that is navigated quite carefully. But we've been using online, we work with people online in therapy now anyway, through lockdown we did. And there are regulations about make sure there's no one in the space. So I guess that type of contract is going to have to be brought in as well.
I think the Secret Story Network has the opportunity to help individuals as a distraction technique. So we've been looking at the applicability of it for our patient profile and where it would fit, how it would fit. I don't think we're fully there yet, and I don't think the medium or the technology is fully there yet, because I think for our client groups, it requires more interaction. So like if you think about the photo voice, the individual was still having a face-to-face contact with the therapist, and there's a lot more interaction. Whereas the secret story, the platform is too at a distance for depending on the client groups. However, in saying that, it might be more useful for mild to moderate symptomologies, for individuals who may need limited or light touch support. So in that step down model of care, it may be useful towards the end and help build that resilience, give individuals a mechanism or a way in which to, rather than thinking about constantly or being bombarded with the notion of focusing on their challenges and everything, this may be a nice distraction technique, a developmental technique to help them explore other areas of making sense of their world. So it is a useful tool. It is about how we apply it and how service users or clients will use it as well. So I think we need to think about the medium and how it's utilized and interacted. Because at the moment, the secret story is very much text-based. So there may be opportunity to introduce imagery or digital imagery and, you know, avatars and things like that. So there's opportunity to expand it and to explore the different elements of it. I think there are challenges depending on the nature of the mental health need of the client group that's using it. So if somebody is having a psychotic or long-term psychotic episode, I think that would not be appropriate for them at that moment in time, because it may aggravate or may induce or may provide more challenge to the therapeutic interaction rather than actually help assist the distraction of it. So there are things to observe, but I think as a tool, it is definitely something that we can explore and develop, because it definitely has a place within the NHS setting.